And hello, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for streaming with us here on ABC News Live. Breaking news, another Omicron case confirmed here in the U.S., this time in Minnesota. The first confirmed case detected in California after a vaccinated traveler landed here from South Africa. Both people vaccinated. The White House now rolling out its new list of actions to combat the new COVID variant, starting with new steps to ensure eligible Americans get boosted. More on all of that in just a moment. Former Ohio Deputy Sheriff Jason Meade indicted for the murder of Casey Goodson Jr. The 23-year-old was shot and killed by Meade while working with the U.S. Marshals Southern Ohio Fugitive Task Force. Meade, who has since retired from the force, was a 17-year veteran of the Sheriff's Office. We'll follow the case. An investigation underway after 81-year-old philanthropist Jacqueline Avant, the wife of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame music executive Clarence Avant, was found dead after an alleged home evasion. The Avants, married for 54 years and known to be a power couple within their Beverly Hills community. The WTA suspending all tournaments in China now, citing the lack of transparency over those allegations made by Olympian Peng Shuai, who disappeared after accusing a top Chinese official of sexual assault. The European Union still demanding proof that Peng is alive and safe. More now in that fight against COVID and the new Omicron variant. As we mentioned, another case is detected, and it happened right here in the U.S. today, this time in Minnesota, after the first case was announced in California yesterday. Well, the Minnesota Department of Health says that the person is a vaccinated male who recently traveled to New York City. He developed mild symptoms, which have now been resolved. This is all happening at the same time President Biden is rolling out a new winter strategy in an effort to curb the variant. ABC's chief national correspondent Matt Gutman has more for us.
As officials urge calm about the first case of Omicron in the U.S.,
but it is also certainly not a cause for us to panic.
The White House rolling out a list of actions to combat it, starting with new steps to, quote, ensure the nearly 100 million eligible Americans who have not received boosters get one as soon as possible. The administration saying it also plans to make at-home rapid tests free, extend mask requirement on public transit, and require more stringent testing protocols for all international travelers. So far, most of the world's Omicron cases are connected to southern Africa, which is also where that first U.S. patient had been prior to landing in San Francisco on November 22nd. 3 days later, on Thanksgiving, the traveler feeling symptoms. And 4 days after that, on the 29th, testing positive, self-reporting to authorities.
The person was very proactive, and upon knowing that they were infected, they contacted the San Francisco Department of Public Health.
And that positive sample arriving at Dr. Charles Chu's lab on November 30th.
In this case, because of the travel history, we decided to prioritize the sequencing.
The patient had been fully vaccinated but was not yet due for a booster, officials saying the person's close contacts have all tested negative. That first case discovered as the CDC directed airlines on Wednesday to provide contact information of all passengers who had been to Africa. With 30 mutations in the virus's spike protein alone, this image showing how different Omicron is from Delta.
The molecular profile of the kinds of mutations that you see would suggest, A, that it might be more transmissible and that it might elude some of the protection of vaccines.
That unknown driving crowds to vaccination sites. At some pharmacies, slots for boosters booked for weeks.
The availability dates were getting pushed into next week and the week after. So I just knew we would be in this area, and we tried something more local, and that one worked out for us.
Hey, Kira, this is the lab at the University of California, San Francisco, that actually did the sequencing of Omicron. They got a sample, and within 5+ hours, they managed to sequence the whole thing, partly using this gizmo that plugs into a computer via a USB. It's fairly more complex than that, but basically, that's how it worked. Now, the doctor who runs this lab, Dr. Charles Chu, says that it's actually a good thing that they now have a viable sample of this new variant in the United States. It allows them to culture it, replicate it, and essentially work with it to try to determine whether it is, in fact, more transmissible and more virulent than the Delta variant. That may not be the case, but he says it'll take them weeks to to make that determination. Kira.
Matt Gutman with an inside look there for us. Matt, thanks. And earlier on Good Morning America, George STEPHANOPOULOS spoke to the dean of the Brown University School of Public Health, Dr. Ashish Jha, about concerns over the Omicron variant. Here's what he had to say.
Inevitable that Omicron would hit our shores. What should we expect next?
Yeah, good morning, George. Thanks for having me back. Yeah, this is not surprising. We knew this was coming. At this point, there are a couple of things for me that I think are be important. One is to track the spread of this variant across our country using both genomic sequencing and just regular testing. And then the second is to see how people are doing, see how vaccinated people are doing with this infection, see how unvaccinated people are doing, seeing if it's causing milder or more severe disease. Those are all things that are going to be critical to watch in the days and weeks ahead.
There seems to be a difference of opinion among the chief pharmaceutical executives about whether the vaccine is going to be effective against this variant. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, so we just need more data at this point. We just don't know. I think there is reason to be concerned that our vaccines may take a hit. I'm pretty confident if you're fully boosted, you're going to have a high degree of protection, but we'll know more in the next week to 10 days, George.
And that's part of the president's plan that we just heard about. How do you assess the president's plan?
I like it. Look, it's comprehensive. We have to take a multifaceted approach, right? We've got to have testing. People have to be wearing masks indoors in crowded places. Obviously, people really should be getting boosted. Those are all the tools that we have developed over the last 20 months, and we need to deploy them all right now.
And we really do have to expand the boosters at this point, right? I mean, and there's some talk about whether all college students should get their booster for 2022.
Yeah, I really believe everybody 18 and above should get a booster. To me, the data on this is very clear, has been clear for several months now. That would obviously include almost all college students, not only because they will protect themselves, but they'll also slow down the spread. So I think boosters for all adult Americans is the right way to go at this point.
Dr. Jha, thanks as always for your time and your information.
And coming up, new developments in the fatal movie set shooting involving ALEC Baldwin. Speaking to our George STEPHANOPOULOS in his first interview since the shooting, while we're hearing from the owner of the prop arsenal that provided guns and ammunition to that film. Welcome back to ABC News Live. I'm Kira Phillips. Let's get to the latest now on that fatal movie set shooting involving ALEC Baldwin. In an exclusive interview with our George STEPHANOPOULOS, Baldwin sat down with him actually saying that he did not pull the trigger in that accident that killed cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. Now, the lawyer for the assistant director of the film, Rust, is speaking out as well to our Kaylee Hartung.
A lawyer for the movie's assistant director, Dave Halls, responding to George STEPHANOPOULOS' exclusive interview with ALEC Baldwin, saying her client also maintains that Baldwin never pulled the trigger.
The entire time, Baldwin had his finger outside the trigger guard, parallel to the barrel, and that he told me since day one he thought it was a misfire. I know. And and until ALEC said that, it was just really hard to believe. But Dave has told me since the very first day I met him that ALEC did not pull that trigger.
Also, the owner of a prop arsenal that provided guns and ammunition to the production of Rust is speaking exclusively to ABC News, but asking for his face to not be shown.
PDQ Arm and Prop supplied the guns, the blank ammunition, and 50 dummy rounds to the show.
As the investigation continues to try to determine how live rounds wound up on the movie set and led to the death of Halyna Hutchins, a new search warrant sending authorities to collect evidence from Seth Kenny's Albuquerque business, PDQ Arm and Prop. But Kenny says that live ammo they seized doesn't match what was found on the set.
They found 4 rounds that were close enough to take in with them. They're not a match, but they were close. So there's something very unique about the live rounds that were found on Rust, but we've got to wait for the FBI to do its job.
Kenny, a vendor and an expert armorer, providing invoices to ABC News showing the purchases by Rust. But he says he wasn't their only provider.
There were other dummy rounds that were integral to the gun belts. So those rounds we can't speak to.
According to that search warrant, Thale Reed, the father of Russ armorer Hannah Gutierrez Reed, and a veteran weapons expert himself, told detectives he thought the live ammunition found on set could have been left over from a previous training session he worked with Kenny on during a different production. Kenny says that's not possible.
Are you confident that PDQ did not mistakenly, accidentally, somehow send live rounds to the set of Rust?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not a possibility that they came from PDQ or from myself personally. When we send dummy rounds out, they get individually rattle tested before they get sent out. So if you have a box of 50, you've got to do it 50 times. And then at that point, you know they're safe to send.
And Kira, Seth Kenny tells me he is fully cooperating with this investigation, and he expects, just as authorities have said, that so many important questions will be answered once the FBI processes the live rounds found on the set. He explains that forensic analysis could even detect fingerprints or DNA on those casings. Kira.
All right, we'll continue to follow the case. Kaylee, thanks so much. And tonight we will hear more of George Stephanopoulos' exclusive interview with ALEC Baldwin. Here's a quick preview.
She was someone who was loved by everyone who worked with and liked by everyone who worked with and admired. I mean, even now, I find it hard to believe that. It just doesn't seem real to me.
You haven't said much in public since that tragic accident. Why speak out now? I think the big question, and the one you must have asked yourself 1,000 times, how could this have happened? You've described it as a 1 in a trillion shot, and the gun was in your hand. How do you come to terms with that? It wasn't in the script for the trigger to be pulled.
Well, the trigger wasn't pulled. I didn't pull the trigger.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them, never.
What did you think happened? How did a real bullet get on that set?
I have no idea. Someone put a live bullet in a gun, a bullet that wasn't even supposed to be on the property.
How do you respond to actors like George Clooney who say that every time they were handed a gun, they checked it themselves? Your emotions are so clearly so right there on the surface. You felt shock, you felt anger, you felt sadness. Do you feel guilt? You said you're not a victim, but is this the worst thing that's ever happened to you?
Yes. Yeah. Because I think back, and I think of what could I have done.
And you can watch the full interview with ALEC Baldwin tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC, then later streaming on Hulu. Well, that does it for this hour. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. I'll see you back here 3 p.m. Eastern with Terry Moran. Stay safe and have a great rest of your day.
Good evening. The king is dead. Pablo Escobar, the Colombian drug king, who was for years one of the world's most wanted men, was gunned down today by Colombian police in the Colombian city of Medellin.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.